Hello and welcome to a DFS preview for the 2023 AT&T Pebble Beach Pro-Am. My name is Eric, and here at SweetSpotDFS, it's all about trying to hit the optimal lineup every single week. And in these preview videos, I like to target the stats that I think you want to build your lineups around in order to do just that, which means looking at the bucket system, which if you're unfamiliar with, I do have a video link in the description below that'll send you to a video that explains all about it. You only really have to watch the first 5 minutes of that video to really understand what it's about, but it is 18 minutes long, so if you are interested in that, again, there is a video link in the description below. But we're not just going to be talking about the bucket system in this video. I'll be looking at the tournament and the golf courses used. I'm sure you've heard it all across the industry. There are 3 golf courses being used at this tournament, so we'll briefly talk about that in this video. We'll also go over past optimal lineups as well as GPP winning lineups, just to see if we can find an edge in building lineups that way. We'll review the Farmers Insurance Open just to show you how well the sweet spot process did and the buckets that were involved there, because I'm going to be talking about the buckets at the end of this video, and I want you to feel comfortable in the success of the bucket system. So again, we'll review the Farmers Insurance Open and then get into the bucket system at the end of this video. Before we get into all of that, any of that, let's bring up some giveaways. I run giveaways every single week. So just a reminder, here is the first one. It's what I like to call a subscriber giveaway. I need to update this graphic. But basically, there's a weekly and a monthly giveaway. It consists of like everything that you see on the screen. You need to be subscribed. It requires your participation. So commenting on my videos qualifies as participating on my channel. I do have share on socials, but I kind of got away from the Twitter. I want more traffic here on YouTube. So if you're commenting down below and you're subscribed to this channel, you're going to get free entries into both the weekly giveaway as well as the monthly giveaway. I usually create somewhere between 7 to 9 or 6 to 8 videos a week. If you comment on each of those, you're going to get up to 6 to 9 entries because it is one free entry per video. I don't want you just machine gun commenting in one of my videos trying to get, up to 100 different entries. I do want to reward you for participating, and I want to keep it fair. So one entry per video. But hey, I love having conversations. So if you want to have a conversation in the comment section, please do so. Feel free to, because I will definitely participate with you. So I will be running the weekly giveaway for the Farmers Insurance Open, so people who participate on the videos during that week at the end of this segment, but I want to get through a couple more of the giveaways I like to do. So here you go, subscriber giveaway, you got your weekly, your monthly. I'm also doing kind of a prize picks giveaway, but it's more like a rebate. If you sign up using the promo codes, or if you sign up on Prize Picks and use the promo code SweetSpot and put at least $20 in your account, I'm going to give you $20 back. So if you just use the promo code, I'm going to reward you for doing that. You also, you still have to put that initial deposit in there, but I will, again, give you $20 just for doing so. Now, Prize Picks will match your deposit up to $100. So you don't just have to put 20 in your account. You can put $100 in your account and Prize Picks will match your deposit. Then you'll have 200, and it will only really cost you $80 to do that. Or if you want to play this for free, put $20 in your account and you'll have 40 at the end of when everything is said and done. So again, sign up using the promo code SweetSpot. There's a link in the description below that'll send you to the sign up page, and it'll already populate the SweetSpot promo code, so you don't even have to do that. Super simple. But that is available to you as well. I am providing a cheat sheet. I'm sorry. There is a cheat sheet available for this tournament. You can find that in the description below. There's a link there. All that I ask you to do is once you come to visit this, go up to the file menu, scroll down to make a copy. It's the 4th option from the top. So make a copy. That way you can use the filters that I provide on the spreadsheet. Otherwise, I have it locked up because I don't want people coming in here and kind of vandalizing things for everyone. I haven't had any bad actors, but I've also never given the opportunity for one. Either way, go to the file menu, make a copy, put a then you can use the filters and follow along with me throughout this video, because we'll be talking about the buckets, which is also available on this cheat sheet. And then once we get into each of the buckets and talk about the players for each of those buckets, you can follow along with me. So again, there's a link in the description below. They'll send you to this cheat sheet. Again, just go to File, make a copy, and it's yours. Okay. those are all the giveaway reminders for you. Let's go ahead and run the giveaway for the Farmers Insurance Open. So I have a little handy dandy spreadsheet that randomizes winners. Some people find there to be some skepticism to this, but it is random. I assure you, I've got this interesting little setup over here that'll give me random values that I'll show you afterwards how this works. Let's see, how many entries did we have? We had 40 unique entries. I didn't have as many videos this last week. I can't remember if I had 6, maybe I had 5. I think I had 6 including the live video. By the way, I do live strategy videos 8 p.m. Tuesday. So if you want to come in and join me, join the rest of us, maybe theory craft some lineups, I encourage you guys to go or come join me at 8 o'clock on Tuesdays. Anyways, not a lot of entries, or not a lot of videos for entries to be had, but we did have a pretty good turnout with 40. Once I hit the yes right here, we will find our winner. So good luck to everyone. Our winner is Dave S. He had 5 entries. This one, the entry we pulled, was the tournament and course information. So all videos matter, man. For all the videos that I post out there, they all matter. Now again, here is the randomizer. You can see the values that are produced here. Whoever has the highest value in these videos or in the column will be your winner. And if I put some commands in here, like if I hit 1 and enter, you're going to see that it updates. This name right here ends up being copied over here. So you can see Joanne's name shows up. If I go ahead and put a 2, enter, it's just whatever command that I put in here. Entering a value is a command, so that's what I continue to do, and you can see the name keeps changing. So just want to provide that so no one thinks there's any funny business. Dave, congratulations, man. Way to win. Joanne, by the way, I'm still waiting for you to reach out to me to send you the 2 contest winners that you hit, or the 2 giveaway winners that you hit. Again, email me right there on the screen, sweetspotdfs@gmail.com. You can DM me on Twitter. Either way, contact me. I don't want to do it through the comment section because, you know, again, there are bad actors out there. We don't need them to know any of the information. If we want to save up the money, I can also provide a t-shirt once we get to that threshold, or even a sweatshirt once we get there. Sweatshirts are 40, 45 bucks, something like that. T-shirts are 15. So you're already at 10. That is something I forgot to mention with the giveaways. The monthly, I forgot to talk about the monthly giveaway. Let's pull this down and bring this back up. Monthly giveaway at the end of this month. This is the last couple days that we can get entries into the monthly giveaway. So keep that in mind. We'll be running that next Monday. We'll also run the weekly giveaway as well. $50 if we can hit the sub goal that you see all the way over there to the left. 500 subscribers. We need 20 new ones. So if you know where to find those, send them this way. Let's get 20 new subscribers. If not, that's fine. I'm just going to send out a t-shirt with this logo. I know it's mirrored on your side, but that's just easier for me when we do this podcasting where I can point left and it actually points left. Otherwise, I'd be pointing left and it would look like it's going right. Anywho, monthly giveaway includes all of the participation for the whole last month. So go ahead, get into that. Get as many entries as you can get in. That will be ran Monday night. Let's go ahead and start talking about this tournament. I'm going to pull up the golf courses because we're going to talk about that first. All right. So talking about the tournament, first of all. Tournament is a Pro-Am, which means the pro players will be paired up with a celebrity amateur, basically. Some of these celebrities are better than others. There's another competition off to the side of this tournament. So you've got the PGA Tour tournament, and then you also have the Pro-Am tournament. So like Larry Fitzgerald and Kevin Streelman always pair up together, and they're always within contention. Like there's that part of it, and then there's the real tournament. So it's going to be interesting. There's 156 golfers in this field. There's a 3-course rotation that will accommodate 156 players. We talked about this during the American Express as well as the Farmers. When you get these full fields of 156 players or more, there's not enough daylight to get everybody out on one golf course. So this is the time of the year to do all of the multi-course tournaments. And of course, Pebble Beach, Spyglass, and Monterey Golf Peninsula or Monterey Peninsula Country Club. I forget what it's called, but I think that's what it is. Monterey Peninsula Country Club. They're all within a short driving distance of each other. So it makes sense. Why not use? Spyglass is a pretty good golf course. It ends up being one of the tougher golf courses the PGA Tour play. Well, during this tournament, I should say. It's usually always number one. The second hardest is Pebble Beach. And really, if the wind is blowing hard, then Pebble Beach becomes the hardest. But it usually goes Spyglass is the most difficult, then Pebble, and then Monterey. So just keep that in mind if you're doing showdown slates. It would make most sense doing that. Now, don't just go all 6 players at one course or another unless there's a true weather advantage, or even, players at one golf course are much better than players at other golf courses. We kind of saw that during the American Express, where they just loaded all the best players on one golf course. And it was probably just best following them all the way through. As long as the pricing made sense, you probably got your edge that way. So just keep that in mind. Now, I'm not really going to talk about every single one of these golf courses. What I'll end up doing for you is kind of slowly going through this, because I do have the preferred shot shape into these holes. Now, some of these are more or less, well, I would say most of these are preferred. None of them are absolutely necessary unless I do write that it is necessary. I did this a few years ago. None of the courses have changed where it really matters. So, take it with a grain of salt or a grain of sand. I don't really care. Like I said, it's a preferred shot shape. I think it will help out the most. So as you look through this, pause the video, read the descriptions, look at the shot shapes to see if there's anything that really stands out to you. If anything, if we're rating this from 1 to 100 points, how many points would I actually put into shot shapes, for weighting which players I like the most? Probably 2 points. It's not an end all be all. And it probably works more for a tiebreaker situation if you're between 2 golfers. So really this shouldn't be your first stop, is the shot shape, but it might help. It looks like it favors golfers who draw the ball. So shaping it from right to left when it comes to Pebble Beach golf links. Doesn't mean you absolutely have to hit a draw, but obviously we've seen Jordan Spieth do well here. We've also seen Daniel Berger do well here, who fades the golf ball. Again, it's just whatever. As I scroll through the next one, again, pause the video if you want to read this. If you want to look at the shots, I'll leave it at the top here. Pause it if you want to read it. Here it looks like fades are a little bit more beneficial just by 1 shot. And then when I scroll over to the Monterey Peninsula, I'll let you pause it, scroll down, and you can see fade is also the preferred shot shape, but barely. And it's literally barely, 3 shots versus 2. Otherwise, any shot works. And that kind of applies to the Spyglass golf course, 3 at most, 2 for draws. Any shot shape can work here. So I wouldn't get lost in that. Like I said, out of 100 points, I'd just put maybe 2, maybe even just 1. So don't get too caught up in that. This is a really weak strength of field, by the way. The calculation that I provide, this is also on the cheat sheet, is 175. So if I go to that cheat sheet, you can see it up here at the top under column Y. 175 is the strength of field. This is using the old rating system that the OWGR used to do. I am missing a home field piece to it. So it's, as I've tracked this throughout the years, I'm always within 7 points of what the actual strength of field would be if the OWGR continued to do their old rating. So take that into account. We could just call this the sweet spot strength of field rating for all I care. It's pretty close, and I think as I do because I do the formula for every single tournament, we see when the better when the better golfers are in the field, that number skyrockets. So I think it's pretty accurate. 175 is below average. 230 is usually average strength of field, especially if it is in an elevated event. Elevated events, you get somewhere around 300, and then with major championships, you get up to 800 because obviously your best golfers are in the majors. So keep all of that in mind. Yeah, 175 is pretty weak. So if you're doing any kind of research with strength of field, use the weaker strength of field tournaments to see how some of these other golfers perform. Maybe that gives you a little bit of an edge. And if I was to put a point total of that from 0 to 100, it might be 5. So I'm already kind of telling you a few things that don't necessarily, break the mold or break the bank or whatever term you want to call it. They're just small pieces to add to your overall rating of a player. So that concludes the tournament and golf course information. I shouldn't actually say that. POA is used throughout, I think, each of these golf courses, and if it isn't, it's really the only grass you should be looking at. So I do have that in the cheat sheet, so you can use all of that information. I look at overall POA, which is dating all the way back to 2013, as well as the top 10% success percentage that these players have. So what is their trying to think, what is the rate that they finish inside the top 10 on a POA golf course? That's involved here. And then I'm using 1 full year's worth of POA stats to populate this last year POA column. So you can use all that information at your disposal. I also include these grass stats into my rankings, which are over here. We'll talk about rankings tomorrow in the live video, the strategy video, but this is all available to you on the cheat sheet. Again, link in the description below. That concludes the tournament and golf course information. Let's go ahead and review. Hold on. Let me get here. All right. Let's go ahead and review pass optimal and GPP winning lineups because, well, first of all, I love kind of seeing what happens every single year when it comes to the optimal and the GPP. Like sometimes the optimal leaves a ton of money on the table, sometimes it doesn't. But I like to see if DraftKings gets their salary construction correct and how well some of the top salary golfers perform at this golf course. So we can go all the way back to 2018, kind of when DraftKings started implementing salaries for every golf tournament, not just the majors. In 2018 is when Ted Potter Jr. took down Dustin Johnson, if you remember that one. But take a look at this. I think this is really interesting. I would imagine that most pass optimal lineups would have left a ton of money on the table for this tournament. And this is kind of foreshadowing because you're going to see a lot of the same trends happen throughout this segment. DJ, so he's not in the optimal, but he was second. Jason Day was in the optimal. He was $10,900. So we have our first 10K going through this. But hey, look at this. 10, 9, 8, 7, 7, 6. It's the model that I continue to advocate for. It's where you should always start building your lineups from. Can you put a 10K golfer in your lineup? With that, can you also then put a 9, an 8, 2 7s, and a 6? If not, remember, you can make 2 substitutions. So if you don't want a 9K in your lineup, you can either put a second 10K in your lineup or drop that 9 down to an 8. So it would look like a 10, 8, 8, 7, 7, 6. And again, you can make 2 substitutions. So maybe you want another 10. You go 10, 10. Remember, we don't want a 9. We can drop that 8 down to a 7, which would be kind of weird. But you go 10, 10, 7, 7, 7, 6. Or 10, 10, 8, 7, 6, 6. So you do something like that. Remember, you make 2 substitutions. But either way, we have a 10, 9, 8, 7, 7, 6 start right here in 2018. Do we see that in 2019? We sure do. Actually, it's 2 6Ks. Remember, we can make that the substitution. So we have a 10 2 9s. So we're going to skip an 8K and we're going to come back up to a 9. And we would normally have 2 7s, but we're going to skip one of those and add in 2 6s. So here we have a 10 9 9 7 6 6, like I just said in the year before. So that was your optimal lineup there, using up all $50,000. Now, your GPP winning lineup left $200 on the table, used up $49,800, and it went 10 9 9 7 7. Scroll down, 6. Julian Etelane. Some of us old, like I shouldn't say old, but some of the people that have played DraftKings forever remember Julian's name. He, I'm pretty sure, is an Argentinian, and was supposed to be like the next big thing, or not so much big thing, but the next big thing for Argentina golf. You know, you had Angel Cabrera and a couple other guys, Emiliano Grillo. It's kind of funny seeing his name. Either way, still has a 10K golfer in it, and we have 2 9s. I have, like, before even going into this, before even diving into this, I thought to myself, oh gosh, what we're going to see is probably, like, you know, start at a 9, drop to an 8, then have 3 7s and a 6, or maybe you go 9, 3 7s and 2 6s, you know, and leave 3,000, you know, $2,000 to $3,000 on the table. Like, I was imagining that's what the optimal lineups, because I couldn't quite remember when I went through this last year, but this is kind of cool, kind of interesting. I didn't anticipate this. 2020 is where we leave some money on the table, though. So the optimal lineup used up $48,500 of the $50,000 salary cap, and that one had a 7K. Or actually, let's start top down. We had a 10K, a 9K, 7, 7, 7, 7. So we skip an 8. We skip a 6, we bring them both into the 7s, which again is doable. Now, I wouldn't leave $1,500 on the table. That's why I created a Sweet Spot Optimal that use up all 50,000, and wouldn't you know, it goes 10, 9, 8, 7, 7, 6. All 6 golfers are inside the top 5, just like in the optimal lineup. I didn't actually piece out how many points that scored, but your optimal scored 633. And if I were to copy all of this, I might have just found a new optimal. I had to have copied that down wrong, right? Oh, 653. I wrote it down wrong. Oh, I said it wrong. I saw 633. So 653.50. I copied too many players. And this is 650.5. Okay, yep. So 3 points behind is your Sweet Spot Optimal, and that used up all 50,000. So this is what I like to do in these videos, is just show you like a more realistic lineup that you could actually build that uses close to all 50,000 of the salary, and then also provide you how far away from the optimal lineup was that. This was 3 points away from the optimal lineup. Your GPP winning lineup scored 601.5 points, and that used up 50,000. It went 10, 9, 2 7s, an 8. I mean, we had a 6 and another 7. Okay, so this one went 10, 9, 8, 7, 7, 7. Right? 10K in Jason Day, 9K in Phil, 8K in Ches Reavie, and then Streelman, Stallings with your 7Ks. Am I missing something? And Nick Taylor, 7K. Yeah. 3 7Ks. So it went 10, 9, 8, 7, 7, 7, which also kind of follows the whole Sweet Spot process. Going to 2021, your optimal lineup left $1,100 on the table. It scored 667.5 points. And that consisted of Daniel Berger at 10,000, Mav at 7, Jordan at 9, Lashley at 7, Hoffman and Hoagie also at 7K. So we had 4 7K golfers there, but it started 10-9 once again. Now, I created a Sweet Spot Optimal. That scored 664.5 points. Now, again, Optimal scored 667.5. Sweet Spot scored 664.5. So we're 3 points away once again, and we're only leaving $400 on the table. And that one went 10, 9, and 4 sevens as well. So again, you can make 2 substitutions. If we start 10, 9, 8, 7, 7, 6, we sub one of those 8Ks down to another 7, and we sub the 6K up to a 7. So we get our 4 sevens that way. It works out. And that's your 2021 year with Optimal and Sweet Spot Optimal. But your GPP winning lineup had a 10K in it, 2 8Ks, 3 8Ks, I'm sorry, a 7, and a 6. So let's read that off again. That was it started with 10, and then it put 3 8Ks in, a low 7K, and a mid 6K. So that's a super interesting build. Now that 6K was Akshay Bhatia, which I think had a lot of buzz in 2021. So, hey, guy took it down. He scored 606.5 points, 60 points behind the Optimal, 57 points behind the Sweet Spot Optimal. So there was definitely room that you could, build in there. So going 3 8Ks might not have been the best option with that lineup. In 2022, I shouldn't even have said it that way. And from that last segment or in 2021, the guy won a GPP. So you can't say he shouldn't have gone that way because he did and he won money. And in 2022, your optimal score or it used up $49,400 of the $50,000 salary cap. It scored 689 points. GPP used up all 50,000. That scored 656.5. So there's only like 30 points behind or between those lineups. That was a lot closer. And they both used north of 49,000 in the salary cap. So keep all of that in mind. Your optimal started with a 10K, 9K, 7, 7. I'm sorry. It was 10, 9, 8, 7, 7, 6. So we had 10 with Jordan Spieth, 9 with Fitzpatrick, 8 with Hoagie, 7 with Merritt, 7 with Damon, and 6 with Beau Hossler. Your GPP winning lineup doesn't look like they even use a 10K golfer. It went Shames Power 9, Fitzpatrick 9, Hoagie with 8, Merritt with 7, Damon 7, and McCarthy 8. So there's your balanced build. I'll read that off again. That was 2 9s, 2 8s, and 2 7s. Super balanced. So there's many ways you can take down a GPP. Now, and this one was 30 points behind. So it was really, really close. You still could take it down going with the 10, 9, 8, 7, 7, 6. Now, Beau Hossler, let's just look at that guy. 2 missed cuts leading into it. How are you going to get to someone like Beau Hossler? Even his course history isn't that great. 59, like his average finishing position before that year was 59th place, with the year before being 47th place. So I think you're going to have to find, like if you want to hit the optimal lineup, like I'm always chasing, you're going to have to find a random 6K that just doesn't look like a good fit for this golf course or for this tournament. Or maybe you just take the more balanced approach like the GPP winner did in this last year. Let's see. Let's just piece it out. Denny McCarthy had a top 6 or top 10, I should say. Shamo had a couple top 20 finishes with a 3rd place in there. Damon didn't look good at all. Fitzpatrick had not played on U.S. soil prior to that for that calendar year. Troy Merritt had 1 missed cut, but he had a 16th place the year before. Hoagie had 1 top 10, and that was at the American Express with 2 missed cuts. Now, I believe this is actually like, it's like the anniversary with a couple things. There was another YouTuber that came into my videos, commented when I was talking about, I think it was a review video. I was talking about how well the buckets did and how silly it is just to chase approach stats to try to find success in DFS. And he goes, how do you think we got to Tom Hoagie? He was trending up with all of his approach stats. And then he deleted the comment before I could even reply back to him. I know who you are. You know who you are. He could have left it. We could have had a playful discussion. That's all I'm trying to say. I'm not trying to threaten or be threatening. But there, I guess with approach, you certainly could have gotten there with him. I don't know if you could have gotten there with any of the other guys that were in that GPP winning lineup, but perhaps. you know, perhaps. And I remember last year I was on a podcast with Joe Nicely. I forget what they call theirs. I don't remember what they call their pod, but him and I were talking about how he liked Cantlay and I like Jordan Spieth. They both finished inside the top 10, both 10K golfers. That's another thing I want you all to realize here is we've seen a 10K golfer inside the top 10 every single year. There hasn't not been a 10K golfer inside the top 10. And also there hasn't not been a 10K golfer in the optimal lineup. Yeah, no, going back every single year, we use a 10K golfer in every single optimal. And if it wasn't an optimal, which it looks like it was also in the sweet spot optimal. So really starting with the 10K as well as a 9K, right? 9Ks have been every single year. I guess what I could do is just pull up the salaries here. Yeah, look at this, guys. So I keep track of the minimum amount of times that a bucket has finished inside the top 10. And we're looking at the salary buckets right here. Every single year we've seen at least one 10K golfer, 2 9K golfers, and 4 7K golfers. Like, we just went, you know, I just kind of show you the eyeball test with the numbers. This is actually just breaking down every single golfer inside the top 10 and showing you how frequently salaries or golfers from those salaries finish inside the top 10. Now, don't get me wrong. I know, because I criticize people the same way that I can hear criticism with me saying that. You can't just use a number to fill in, you know, your lineups with. You can't just say, okay, you need a 10, a 9, and you know, 2 7s. You can't just say that without looking at each of those buckets, which of course we always do that, right? That's my whole shtick is we dig into the buckets. We look at the projections of what we can anticipate of golfers from that bucket finishing inside the top 10, because we bring into the quality of that bucket. So we'll get there, but very interesting that we've seen that every single year in a tournament that I feel like, gosh, with it being a pro-am, with the strength of field being as small as it is, as low as it is, as weak as it is, I would imagine it would have just been ransacked with 7K golfers, 6K golfers. Optimals would have left $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 on the table. I anticipated that because I had forgotten what I talked about last year. It's not the case. We see at least a 10K, at least a 9K, and at least a couple 7s, obviously 4 7s. So it definitely is ransacked by the 7K range. Yeah, we'll dig into this once we get into the buckets. I just wanted to point that out because I was kind of looking through all of this and kind of eyeballing it all and going, what the heck? Now, here's another piece of information that I was going through. Look at all of our 10Ks. I was trying to find another common theme with these 10K golfers to try to figure something out. One of 2 things. Actually, one of 3 things. Look at their last year finishes. Look at how many top 10 finishes they had heading into this tournament. And also look at the recent form. So this is 2018. We're only looking at 10K golfers that were in the optimal or close to. Jason Day, good last year finish, good recent form, and a top 10 finish. I don't know if we've seen the other 10Ks up there. I don't care to look at every 10K, but I just want to point out that the ones we see inside the top 10, we're kind of seeing a similar trend. Jason Day, top 4 the year before. No top 10s, but a top 20. Had great recent form coming in. Great tournament history. 2021, Berger. Had a missed cut coming into the tournament, but had 2 top 10s prior to that. Had a top 10 or had a top 20 finish the year before. Patrick Cantlay, same thing. He had a second place, you know, a top 10. Great recent form. Top 20 finish the year before. You know, Jordan Spieth was really close to that 10K range. He comes in with the top 10 heading into the tournament with a top 20 from the year before. Jason Day, not so much, but he did have a top 20 the year before. Kind of interesting trends that we're seeing. Jordan Spieth kind of breaks that mold here because he just has a 21st place finish, but he does have a top 20 the year before. Not super great recent form coming in. But Patrick Cantlay continues with the mold. He had a top 10, great recent form. He also had a top 20 the year before as well. So it's like, it's really hard to ignore that. When I see Jordan Spieth last year, he was in the optimal lineup, not Patrick Cantlay, but Patrick Cantlay was one shot behind Jordan Spieth, if I remember correctly. So Jordo was third last year, right? Yes. So 17 under. Okay, never mind. Patrick Cantlay was 15 under. I think Cantlay parred the last hole, which is a par 5, if I remember correctly. I thought he still had a shot. Throughout that whole back nine, I thought he still had a shot to win. That just from my memory. Maybe I'm wrong. Yeah, so 2022 was kind of the only odd year where like a 10K golfer didn't really follow that mold, but Patrick Cantlay was really close. Either way, we see our 10Ks with top 20 finishes the year before in what, every single year? 2021, Berger had that top 10 or top 20 year before. So did Cantlay. 2020, Jason Day certainly did. Jason Day also had it in 2019. And in 2018, we also see that. So that is the ongoing thing. If I was putting combinations together, I would tell you want a 10K golfer who had a top 20 finish the year before. If I scroll up, that includes Jordan Spieth, Fitzpatrick, and Hoagie. And I would say, you know, something that might even be more helpful is if they had a top 10 finish sometime that calendar year, which you see that with Fitzpatrick and Hoagie. Of course, Jordan Spieth, you know, last year did not have a top 10 heading into it and did just fine. We might be concerned with Jordan Spieth because he missed the cut at the Sony. He's had 2 weeks to figure it out. Maybe Jordan Spieth is a good choice. So really, really, really interesting takes considering who to play this week, just based off of what we've seen in past optimal and past GPP winning lineups. So that one went a little longer than usual, but I thought there was a lot of interesting pieces to consider in that. So that concludes your past optimal lineups as well as GPP winning lineups. Let's go ahead and review the Farmers Insurance Open last week. So one thing I want you guys to focus in on, we're looking at this column here. That is this year's totals. If this shows a Y, that means the bucket that correlates with it as you look across means it was successful. And what I determined successful is, well, we look at the projections that I had. You know, we have our minimum, our maximum, the amount of golfers that finished inside the top 10 in that bucket. Did it fit in those projections? And if it didn't, did the optimal lineup? And these are really the only two checkpoints I'm looking at. I'm not really looking at the sweet spot optimal, but I did build a lineup using the buckets really, really strictly. We'll get into that when I show you what that lineup is, because we want to see if that still beats a GPP winning lineup if it does not hit the optimal, because either way, then it's still a success. So as you can see, there's a lot of Y's on the screen. There is only one no. Only one no. When we look at that recent form 5 bucket, these are golfers coming in with really bad recent form. We usually don't see a lot of golfers from this bucket perform successfully. Now, I was projecting somewhere between 0 to 1. One of them finished inside the top 10. However, the optimal lineup had 2 golfers from this bucket in it, because sometimes it doesn't require all 6 golfers to be inside the top 10 to hit the optimal. So we can look at this as a success, because as all I'm trying to do is project top 10s, which that obviously means this was successful. But I'm also looking at optimal lineups, you know, because that's what we're chasing. We're trying to hit the optimal lineup. Now, usually I like to look at this bucket over here, or this column here. This is kind of like this incorporates the sweet spot score, which is my whole modeling system. Sometimes this is higher than, like, the max projection from here is higher than what I have that I go by, I should say. So then it's like kind of a win-win. So all the buckets, I mean, 35 out of 36 were successful. And we actually did project the right amount of golfers from this one finishing inside the top 10. So it's really hard to say we weren't 100% perfect. But if that wasn't good enough, we can always look at the GPP winning lineup and compare that to the Sweet Spot Optimal. I'll first talk about the optimal lineup, which used up all $50,000 of the salary. It scored 583 points. And it used Max Homa. Let's actually break down. So you needed a 10K golfer. You needed two 9K golfers, an 8K golfer, 7, and a $6,300 Eric Barnes, who placed 13th place. It's a really interesting way of building lineups. Now, again, you follow the 10-9-8, 7-7-6 approach. You'd sub one of those 7Ks all the way up to a 9K, which really, it almost never happens. But we're using our flat 10K golfer in Morikawa, a very low 9K golfer in Max Homa, arguably another low 9K golfer in Sung Jae Im. 9,300 is kind of on the low end of the 9K range. A low 8K golfer, 8,300, a low 6K. This all makes it work out, and then a flat 7. So it's all the low end price points of those salary ranges. And that's how it works out. But hey, you can make up to 2 substitutions. I'd almost consider that 2 substitutions all by itself, going from a 7 all the way up to a 9, because you're subbing up to an 8 and then up to a 9. It's not just one giant leap as a substitution in my mind, because how else do you build lineups? Like, it's difficult to do something like this without having a really low 6K golfer. But anyways, that's a really interesting optimal lineup. Now, again, that scored 583 points. The GPP winning lineup scored 541 points. It also used up $50,000 of the salary, and that's all the golfers here in blue. So what we have is a very balanced build, including Eric Barnes. So we had a 9K golfer, Max Homa, 8,700 Sahith Theegala, 8,800 Jason Day, $9,000 Hideki Matsuyama, $8,100 Justin Rose, and $6,300 Eric Barnes. So Eric Barnes was the guy apparently you needed to go to regardless. GPP winner, optimal lineup. That was very balanced. However, using only the buckets, very strict conditionals. So when I go over these in the strategy video, when I build lineups and I'm using the buckets very strictly, that is also what I did here. And when we do that, we score 554. So that was 13 points more than the GPP winning lineup, and it's 30 points less than the optimal. It used up $49,600. So again, if we follow the Sweet Spot Optimal, we can still take down a GPP during the Farmers Insurance Open, which to me says the Sweet Spot process was 100% successful. So the golfers you wanted there, John Rahm, that was like one of those points of contention. Do we go with Rahm? If you recall, the Sweet Spot process also incorporates the marquee tee times. So when I look at that, we're going to go back to the Sweet Spot Optimal, but I want you to see what grab everyone. We go by group rank, and then I'm going to highlight 3 golfers at a time here. I mean, every golfer that's in a group. Now, this is so crazy. My rules with this, so we have 9 marquee tee times. You want to grab somewhere between 2 to 4 golfers from the marquee tee times and put them in your lineup. Anchor around those guys in your lineup. Also, another rule is don't play more than 1 golfer from each group, because we rarely ever see 2 guys from the same group finish inside the optimal lineup. Well, you obviously see on the screen. There are 2 groups that have 2 golfers that were in the optimal lineup. So this is like the rarest of the rare gems that you can ever find when doing this, because this is the first time I've ever seen this when keeping track of the marquee tee times. We had Max Homa and Colin Morikawa in the second group. Oh, he's blue, so that's why. They both were golfing together Wednesday, Thursday, because it started on Wednesday. And then you had Keegan Bradley and Sung Jae Im in the same group as well, that finished inside the optimal lineup. It's insane. But if we're following the Sweet Spot process, like I just said, grab 2 to 4 guys and don't grab this golfer from the same group. So you can then see, that's why we pick Rahm. So all this green in column K, the highlighted salaries in green, those are your sweet spot optimal lineup guys. So it works out. We're grabbing Rahm, we're grabbing Max Homa, and we're grabbing Keegan Bradley. So that's why the sweet spot optimal is using Jon Rahm instead of Colin Morikawa, because I would go with the 10K golfer, the one that scored the most points. I mean, I guess Morikawa only scored, what, 2 more points than Rahm? 2.5 more points? Yeah. And the finishing place was a little bit off. So either way, we still go with Rahm, starting at 11.6. Then we go to Max Homa. Now, when I do my strategy videos, I'm trying to kind of force my first instinct lineup. I was going with Jon Rahm and Taylor Montgomery. As I was building lineups after that pod, I just let the optimizer do its work, and I locked in Rahm. The first golfer that it chose was Max Homa. And even when I went with Rahm and say like another 7K guy or another 8K guy, it always brought in Max Homa. So I just thought then and there, you know what? I'm going to build a lot of my lineups with Jon Rahm and Max Homa. And I was right. It worked out. Like, that's what I love about the bucket system. That's what I love about my optimizer, is it can get me on guys like that when I'm not trying to put any bias into it. Now, the only bias I really had was Jon Rahm. I thought Jon Rahm was going to get 3 wins in a row. I think he's that generational talent that can do something like that. He was really close. I didn't get to watch a lot of golf Saturday, I should say. That was the final round. I didn't get to watch a lot of golf, so I don't know what happened to Rahm. I'm assuming burnout, perhaps. It is Torrey Pines. He's in the last group. I'm assuming the greens were hard. He couldn't make any putts, but what I saw kind of in the shot tracker on the PGA Tour app was just he wasn't hitting his irons very well. So I don't know. I don't know exactly what transpired with Rahm's game. Doesn't matter. He was still in the sweet spot optimal. If you had played him and you paired him up with Homa, there was a path that would have gotten you to win a GPP. And that's all that matters. So anybody who's trying to do victory laps saying, Rahm wasn't the optimal, Rahm wasn't in the GPP winning lineup. No, but I could still kick your ass by putting Rahm in a lineup. That's all that matters. So the sweet spot optimal would have been 11.6 with Jon Rahm, 9,100 with Max Homa, 8,300 with Keegan Bradley, flat 7 with Sam Ryder. We are including Eric Barnes, so he's the trifecta. He's in the optimal, the GPP winning lineup, as well as the sweet spot optimal. Then we're going with Brendan Steele, which I was on as well. A lot of my lineups started with Rahm, Homa, Steele. And guess what? I won $270. I only put $70 in. It all worked out. Or I think it was $240. I can't remember. It was something like that. Still tripled my investment. It all worked out. I went with the right core. And that's what the whole sweet spot process is all about. Hitting the right core, using the buckets, using the anchor buckets, which, that's what we used. I wish there was an easy way to show you the anchor buckets without really diving into it. I would just say this. Check out the strategy video where we do the anchor buckets. We called out a lot of the golfers that did fit in those anchors. Jon Rahm was one of them, obviously. I believe Jason Day was also in a lot of the buckets. Oh, there he is. He finished 7th place. Didn't score a lot of points, when it comes to DraftKings, but he was doable. He was in the GPP winning lineup. Go check out the anchor buckets in the preview video. You're going to see that pretty much hit the head on the nail. I mean, we just saw 35 out of 36 buckets were successful in projecting the right amount of golfers inside the top 10. And I should actually say it was 36 out of 36. Because if it wasn't for that optimal lineup conditional that I put in there as well, it would have shown up that it was 36 out of 36 correct. So hopefully that gives you a little bit of confidence as we talk about the next segment, which is going to be the bucket system for the AT&T Pebble Beach Pro-Am. Let me go ahead and get again, so you can follow along with me. There's a link in the description that will bring you to the cheat sheet. You can follow along with me. All that I ask you to do. So here, I'll show you the cheat sheet. Here's the cheat sheet. Go to the file menu, make a copy. That way you can use the filters that I'm going to provide on here. You can also follow along with me on the bucket system tab of this spreadsheet and follow along with me when I go through this. So let's go ahead, pull up the bucket system for this week. And just a reminder, let me remove. Just a reminder how we read these, the bucket system, how we read this page. We are looking at our minimum projection. We round down with whatever number's in there. So 2.16 for our last year ones rounds down to 2. 3.6 rounds up to 4. So the real projection would be 2 to 4. That's how we do this. And if this was 2.99, it still gets rounded down to 2, as well as if this was 3.01, we still round that up to 4. So keep that in mind. Let me go ahead and hide some of this information. Let me bring in what we really want to be looking at. This is what we do. Yep. Okay. So now that all the important pieces of information are up here, now you won't have access to the information here, but I do want to keep the optimal lineups as a visual point for you. We're looking at bucket totals, you know, how many golfers are in that bucket versus what we see on average every single year. The strength of field points that are going towards that bucket, as well as the percentage of points as a whole that the whole tournament provides. So last year, one bucket, you can see 43% of the strength of field points go towards this bucket, which just increases the projection because it's a high quality bucket based off the strength of field points. And of course, when there aren't a lot of golfers in there, it just kind of proves that, yeah, it's probably a bucket you want to choose from. I'm going to go ahead and just filter out. You can also do this with me. Let's just look at the last year buckets. Now we're going to look at golfers from each of these buckets. I'm not going to spend a lot of time because we're almost already at an hour. But when we look at the last year buckets, one very, very large thing that just points out, very large, is having a top 20 finish here the year before tends to be the most successful predictor of trying to find golfers inside the top 10. 23.29% success rate. This is looking at every golfer that has ever fit in this bucket. How many of them finish inside the top 10? Nearly 25% of them. That is very large. It has a 100% frequency rate. The smallest amount that we've seen is 1, but let me go ahead and pull up the buckets here just to give you a different perspective. That last page, the summary page that we're looking at, takes into account the information that you see here. So you can see that 23.29% that you saw on that page. Like I said, it was almost 25%. It's right here. You see that 1 to 7 and total of 34. You can see all that information right here. 34 total, 1 to 7, 100% frequency success rate. So it's pulling from here. One thing I want you to note, how often do you see less than 4 golfers finish inside the top 10 of a tournament that had a top 20 finish the year before? 2 years, 2016, 2015. I'm sorry. I messed that up. 2017, 2016. Otherwise, we've seen 3 or more every single other year. Sort of what? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 years. 7 of them have had 3 or more golfers from that bucket finish inside the top 10. Now, if I scroll down and take a look at the totals to see if anything might have been different. So this is actually looking at all of the totals from that bucket. No, it's pretty much the same. We had 16 in 2017, 16 in 2016. It is worth noting that, you know, outside of 2022, they are the lowest. It's the lowest volume that we've seen in those buckets, but just by a couple. Like, it's not a lot. So there's nothing really glaring. Like, if we were to see single digits from those buckets, we could be like, oh yeah, that makes sense because we don't see a lot of golfers, or, you know, the conversion rate would be insane if we only had, like, say 9 golfers in that bucket and we still had 4, you know, 3 or 4 guys finish inside the top 10. Anyways, so only 2 years have we seen less than 3 from that bucket. So if we go ahead and put a filter on this, again, you can follow along with me and do this. Look at our last year ones. How many do we have? 17, I think. Yeah, 17. 17 golfers from this bucket. What was one of the top things that we saw when we were going over past optimal lineups? It was the fact that we saw a 10K golfer with a top 20 finish inside the top 10 every single year since 2018. Well, since salaries were out for this tournament. So now you could think of that as superstition. You certainly can. But what I'm noticing, DraftKings, their algorithms kind of match a lot of our models that we create. And those models are based off of a lot of course fit, a lot of recent form, golfers that are coming into the tournament hot, golfers that are really good at this golf course, or this tournament, I should say, since there's 3 golf courses. It takes all of that into account. So if that's consistent, if we're seeing consistency with our top price guys finishing inside the top 10 that had a top 20 finish the year before, why would we skip away from that? I make an argument for I'm gonna say every one of these guys. There's only 3. Each of these 3 golfers. Jordan Spieth, hey, doesn't look sexy, right? He's looked pretty awful the last couple weeks. We saw him at Tournament Champions, didn't look super great there. Sony Open was leading day 1 and then just fell apart day 2. Now, we could say maybe that was a weather split. You know, Friday he played in the afternoon when the course baked out, got really firm. Perhaps that's what it was. I think he also putted really poorly that in that tournament, that second day. First day, he obviously putted well. So I don't see why we can't go back to Jordan Spieth. And you want to know something interesting? Last year, when I advocated for Jordan Spieth at this event, I love the fact that he was erratic, because you don't have to be perfect at Pebble. Pebble is all about creativity, of getting yourself out of trouble, you know, getting yourself out of the bunkers, getting yourself out of the rough. I don't know how thick the rough is this week, but I imagine it's no different from any of the other times he's played here. And he has a pretty darn good track record. He might have one of the best course histories here of having 2 or more events under his belt. So I don't mind that Jordan Spieth hasn't been playing well. Last year, it was one of those things that, again, pushed me onto him. It's like, I like that. I like the fact that he hasn't played well heading into this tournament. We saw it last year. It worked out. I don't know if that's going to continue this week, because, like, I think Matt Fitzpatrick, I was going to call him Matthew Fitzpatrick. Matt Fitzpatrick just is the guy that obviously everyone likes. He's number 1 in my model. 10-1 is a very, very, very generous price tag. He finished 6th here last year. He doesn't have the greatest course history. 50th place is his average finishing position, which is really interesting. Let me take a look at that. Why is that? I have so many tabs on my spreadsheets, by the way. So I'm pulling up my course history and heading up to Fitzpatrick. So in 2022, that was his best finish, 6th place. Otherwise, he has a 60th and a missed cut. And that's why his average isn't so great. But we could argue that last year, I mean, he won the US Open. We know about the distance gains that he's been doing. His game definitely evolved. So perhaps he's just a better golfer. He's not the same guy as he was in 2020 and 2019. So we could probably just, you know, ignore the other 2 years. I don't mind Matt Fitzpatrick, honestly. I do think he's probably, I mean, honestly, I think him and Spieth are very close 1 and 2. And I wouldn't even argue one golfer over the other. So, I mean, I could easily get on Fitzpatrick. It sounds like most of the community is getting on Fitzpatrick. But then there's also Tom Hoge, which he's the winner last year at this event. So he's the defending champion. He could easily finish inside the top 10 once again. This is a golf course that's tailor-made for him. Doesn't hit the ball super far. Very good with his irons. He's been trending that way as of late. Let me just put a freeze here. And we look at his recent form strokes gain stats. I mean, that approach number is gross. Now, if you watched the podcast I did with Byron, the model maniac, back 9 bets, I talked a lot about when you look at a stat, you need to look at the one that's just left of it. So off the tee and approach, you combine those together, you get ball striking. You'd want to see this over 0. You'd want to see this over probably arguably 0.25 or 0.3. His approach and off the tee. Now these are raw stats. This isn't something that's been weighted. It hasn't been averaged. But looking just at raw stats, like, it's pretty darn good. I should actually double check. No. That is looking at averages. Okay, no, it is looking at averages. I had to remember. So look at that. 1.6, pretty gross. Over the last 7 weeks, off the tee is fine. You know, you combine all of these to get your tee to green as well as you combine them all to get your total. Obviously, his total hasn't been better than most. And if we look at his finishes, he had a 3rd at the Tournament Champions, made the cut at Sony, didn't play super great, and then also made the cut at the American Express, which ended up being just a birdie fest. So he doesn't have terrible recent form coming into here. Has, you know, a good finish last year. There's a good reason to play Tom Hoge. So right away from this bucket, remember, only 2 years have we seen less than 3 golfers from this bucket finish inside the top 10. Otherwise, we've seen 3 or more every single year. So with that being said, hard to fade this, especially when we went over past optimal lineups, where we've seen a 10K golfer with a top 20 finish the year before, which is exactly who these guys are. Seen it every single year since 2018. How do we not? How do you not anchor around one of those guys? I'm not fading that. I'm certainly going to. I'm going to practice what I preach. So, hey, tomorrow when we go through the strategy video and build some lineups, I'm starting here. It's going to be one of those guys. Now, the rest of the golfers here are no slouches either. Like, we have a healthy 9K range. 5 golfers from the 9K range in this bucket. Each one of them can finish inside the top 10, no problem. Even our 8K guys, if we want to include those here, I don't see that being an issue at all. And you can always make the argument that, hey, we could have 4 guys finish inside the top 10 from this bucket. It could be Jordan Spieth, it could be Fitzpatrick, Power, and Putnam, and it really just depends on who places better than each one of them. Because obviously they'll gain those first place points. That's 30 DraftKings points just there. Second place is 20, and it goes down by 2. So, you know, if, say, they finish 7th, 8th, 9th, and 10th, it's not really going to matter, but it will matter per price tag. You know, Jordan then becomes a worse value based off his 10.6 price tag, whereas Putnam, you know, being $900 cheaper than Spieth, has a better value finishing inside the top 10 than Spieth. But don't worry about that. That, to me, is, I don't know, you're just trying to find the small little advantage or something that's not worthwhile. I'm trying to remember like the analogy that people usually use. Like you're grasping at straws, you know, something along those lines when we're trying to determine, well, sure, those 4 guys could finish top 10, but I mean, who would you rather have, Power or Putnam, you know, in the top 10, or Spieth or Fitzpatrick? I don't know. Maybe have 2 of those guys in your lineup. I don't see that being an issue. It just helps you overall. So anyways, to me, I'm probably just looking at 8K and above. There are some interesting plays here in the 6 and 7K range, but nothing that I really want to hang my hat on. Like I'm not gonna. Troy Merritt might be the one guy that I really like this week. My rankings have Brennan Todd as someone really good, but I don't think his POA is very great. It's kind of middle of the pack. He's kind of one of the top performers in POA. Interesting. So, hey man, we've got some choices here. Like I said, we've seen a 10K golfer with a top 20 finish every single year inside the top 10, dating back to 2018. I don't think we fade this. We don't fade this mold. I think we stick with one of these guys, and then maybe we fit in one of these 9K guys. I don't see an issue with that. I'm not going to spend as much time on the next couple buckets because you can see the projections are very small. So, like I said, you round down here, you round up here. We have 0 to 1 in the next 3 buckets, and then we have 0 to 2 in bucket 5. That is because this projection isn't over 2. So although this one is over 1, I want a 2-point buffer between them. And in order to do that, I don't want to increase this up to 3. That'd be foolish. So I say 0 to 2. It's always better to be on the low end. And these are all 0 to 2 as well. Because again, we're including 0 into the number. And then the last one is 1 to 3. So why don't we just go ahead and get through this? I think it's going to be super easy. You know, 0 to 2, the next 4 buckets, and then 1 to 3, that last one. And I'll just talk about notable guys that I see in these. Okay, first one, obviously, when we're going to last year 2s, remember, projection is 0 to 2. It's really 0 to 1. But we see Maverick McNeely. That's obviously the name everyone's going to gravitate towards. But I've heard a lot of love for David Lipsky. I've heard a lot of love for Russell Knox so far. Nate Lashley has been popping up in a lot of people's models. This is weird because, hey, some buckets, the molds can be broken for those buckets. I don't think it does this year. I don't think this is gonna. So if you are in love with like McNeely, Lipsky, Knox, those guys, play up to 2 of them. That's it. That's the max. Don't go more than 2. 0 to 2 is what I'm projecting to be inside the top 10. Hey, one of these guys could finish 11th. They don't finish inside the top 10. It still can help you win a GPP. So although I'm saying don't play more than 2, if you want to go ahead and challenge me, that's fine. You can still win a GPP because no one really gets close to the optimal. You can still win a GPP with a less optimal lineup. But I'm sticking to 0 to 2. I'll just keep it at that. And I'm sure my optimizer is going to select McNeely a bunch of times because he's 5th in my model. He almost seems like the lock. You know, a lot of people are going to go to McNeely, and there's a good reason to, right? He used to live on property. I think his parents might still have a house here. Remember, he's the billionaire son. A lot of things point towards Matt McNeely this week, so I don't have an issue with that. It's just up to you. Again, this bucket's 0 to 2. There's no certainty that anyone from this bucket's going to finish inside the top 10. No certainty. Whereas the last bucket we talked about, there is certainty. Yeah. Okay. Going to the next one, again, remember, 0 to 2 projected to be inside the top 10 from this bucket. Taylor Pendrith. Very, like, flashy name. I like seeing Pendrith there, but guess what? I don't mind fading him or playing him less than 5% of my lineups. Easy. I get to cross out Pendrith. I could also cross out Riley. I could cross out all of these guys because I don't care to play any of them. 0 to 2, real projection 0 to 1, but again, the 2-point buffer makes it 0 to 2. So keep that in mind. I think you just probably avoid this one without issue. The next one, again, 0 to 2. This is most likely because there's not a lot of golfers in this bucket. And like the only really notable guy is Justin Rose, but Matthew Neesmith is an interesting name. Austin Eckroat as well. And then the next 3 probably don't really have to talk about. Just to confirm, yeah, this is a really, really small bucket. 0 to 1, and it's not even close to getting 0 to 2. Again, we create the 2-point buffer, but I think you don't want more than 1 guy from this bucket. The next one is also a 0 to 2. Remember, it was 1 to 2, but we always drop down. When there isn't a 2-point buffer, we always drop down to 0. This is a really interesting bucket as well, because a lot of good names come from this bucket. And it's going to be hard to fade them just because. You know, like even just looking at POA stats, there's like Kuchar, 9,400, he's 9th in my model, makes sense. Great on POA, good top 10 percentage. Course history is not great, but whatever. Good reason to fade Kevin Kisner, like I've heard a lot of people saying. Alex Smalley's here, which guy's a stud. He's been playing really good golf lately. Hard to do that. Dean Burmester would be a guy that I was considering. Stallings, Hardy, Kitayama, those are all people. Those are all golfers people have been talking about. Bramlett, Callum Taryn. Oh man, I don't know. It's hard. Just want to double check something. So I'm assuming, yeah. So it's just these top golfers that are really adding the strength of field points to this bucket. So we have 41 in total. That's also what I'm reporting here. Yeah, guys, I mean, it's 0-2. Not a high success rate, but one kind of piece of optimism. It's a 77% frequency rate, which means we're looking at every single year that I've recorded stats for this bucket. Frequency rate records how many times at least one golfer from that bucket has finished inside the top 10 for each of those years. 77% means out of 9 years, we've seen 7 golfers finish inside the top 10, which is pretty good. Or I should say, yeah, 7 years, at least one golfer has finished inside the top 10 from this bucket. So although the projection is small, 0-2, it wouldn't be unwise to anchor around a golfer from this bucket, especially if you like one of them, you know, quite a bit. Which I think that's probably what I'll do in my optimizer. I'll definitely make sure it selects 1, but I'm going to keep the max to 2. Just crazy, crazy. Remember, the next one is 1-3 with the last year bucket. Last year bucket 6. So we want 1-3 of these guys. And it starts with Victor Hovland, which is really interesting because underneath that is Dietrich and Griffin, which I could argue I would rather play more than Victor Hovland. Oh man, there are some good names here. Like, I really like Ben Taylor at his price tag. I like S.H. Kim this week. Robbie Shelton. I also like Eric Van Rooyen. 1-3, yeah, man. I think what I'm going to do this week is going to be fading Victor Hovland. I'm going to put him in probably 10 winner-take-alls, like those 25-cent winner-take-alls. I'll start with Hovland, and then I'll go somewhere else. I'll use the last year 1 anchor bucket still. I'll still put, you know, 1 to 3 golfers in my lineup from there, or 2 to 4, I should say, and then start it with Hovland and just see what it builds me. That way I can get exposure to Hovland, still make a decent amount of, you know, return on my investment if Hovland does well and if I hit the right lineups. Otherwise, I'm kind of cool with fading him. I don't mind it. Because again, I like these guys more. I really like these guys much more than playing Victor Hovland this week. So, up to you guys. I'm not going to, like I said, I'm not going over all these guys, but you can see a ton of 6K golfers down here. I don't know. I don't know if that's where we get cute. Maybe it is, but I think I'll just avoid that. So that rounds out your last year buckets. Let's go ahead and start talking about our last week buckets. Pretty, how do I say this? I want to say pretty watered down. Not really, because the first 4 buckets, last year 1, last year 2, or sorry, last week 1, last week 2, last week 3, and last week 4, we're projecting 0-2 in each of those buckets. So nothing super confident here. Not a lot of golfers in each of those buckets, and not a lot of strength of field points in each of those buckets. So let's just rattle through those really quick. It is worth noting though, last week 1s, we've seen 100% frequency rate, but we're only projecting 0-2 to be inside the top 10. So keep that in mind. It's a very high risk bucket, I would say. So remember, 0-2 from this bucket. Yeah, and we know why. Justin Rose fits that bucket. Taylor Moore fits that bucket. S.H. Kim, Joseph Bramlett, Justin Suh. Yeah, it's easy to consider 0-2 golfers from this bucket without even, like, you know, when we saw the projection, I was like, that's kind of weird. But looking at the golfers, yeah, I don't mind. I mean, I do like Rose in this situation. No problem. And I was just talking about S.H. Kim from the last year 6 bucket. Same with Justin Suh. I don't mind Joseph Bramlett. So anyways, 0-2 is what I'm projecting to be inside the top 10. I wouldn't play more than 2 guys from this bucket. Up to you though. You obviously can. We stick with that same projection for our last week 2s. And if I keep saying last year, it's one of those tongue twisters. I mean to say last week. Last week 2s, we want 0 to 2 here. And I don't think this is as frequent. No, 50% frequency rate. This dates back to 2013. So there's actually 10 years of data here, by the way. 10 years of data. 0 to 2. We actually have more than we typically see on average, but strength of field points not super great. Success rate's not super great. Nothing about this bucket is telling us we need to play anyone from here, which is, again, super interesting because we have a ton of 8K and above golfers in this bucket. Mullinix, Burmester, Ben Griffin, Alex Molly, Thomas Dietrich, and Mav McNeely. You know what? You want to know how this helps me? You know, like Dietrich and Ben Griffin were golfers that from the last year's 6 bucket, I really was considering playing. I still can, but that removes every single one of the other golfers in this bucket from my lineups, which is fine. I don't have to choose Maverick McNeely to be on my lineups, which is great. This is why I like the bucket system. It makes the hard choices for you. You gotta select 0 to 2. Who are you gonna go with? I personally don't mind maybe just going with Griffin or just going with Dietrich and skipping McNeely, skipping Smalley, skipping Mullinax, Griffin, any of those guys. So yeah, 0 to 2. Remember that. That's our projection here. Going to the next last week bucket, which is last week 3s. We want 0 to 2 here as well. Pendrith. He's been in 2 buckets that have not been great. So maybe we cross Pendrith off. Hardy's an interesting name, and then we just drop down into the 6K range pretty quickly. So not really much to talk about with our last week 3s. Let's go to our last week 4s. This rounds out the 0 to 2 projections. And no real notable names here. I mean, Benny Ann, sure. Robbie Shelton, sure. This has always been a bugaboo bucket. That 60 to 80 range, doesn't matter if it's a last year finish or if it's a last week finish, never produces top 10 finishers. Like, I shouldn't say never, it rarely does. So keep that in mind. So we looked at these first 4 buckets. Last week 1, 2, 3, and 4. Now we're on to 5 and 6. Last week 5, we're looking somewhere between 1 to 3. 100% frequency rate. 59 guys in that bucket. So yeah, this is a very volume-driven bucket. Last week 6s did not play is 2 to 5. So the guys that didn't play at the Farmers Insurance Open, this heavily favors. We have seen no less than 3 in this bucket finish inside the top 10 every single year. Again, this goes back to 2013. We have 10 years of data. 3 is the minimum. Now I am projecting 2 to 5. So 2 is on the safe side. I think you want to start with 3. Anyways, we'll start with the last week 5s. 1 to 3 of those guys. And it's the glue of our lineups, basically. We got nothing but 7 and 6K golfers. So I don't have one golfer that I like more than another. I'll let the optimizer decide who to choose. I'll put all the conditionals in there, and then it will spit me out the most optimal lineup based off of, you know, the buckets and the guys we see here. I mean, if you want names from me, I don't mind playing Stallings. I don't mind playing Gordon, Kitayama. Remember that Kitayama, actually all of these guys were in not all of them. We were talking about last year buckets. Like Kitayama and Stallings weren't in a bucket that you really wanted to select from. Neither was Davis Riley. Ben Taylor, I really like. So maybe I just lock in Ben Taylor at $7,200. I don't know. What is his, he's played 10 POA events. Hasn't broken inside the top 10 of any of those events, which isn't great. Not really good overall POA. Not very good last year POA, so might pump the brakes on that. And what did he do last week? Off the tee was positive, approach was positive, but his putting was really bad. So that's something that I like to see. Same applies with his recent form stats, his off the tee and approach stats, all really good. So yeah, I could still go to Ben Taylor. It seems like a really good value. And maybe he breaks his POA mold. Maybe maybe he plays well here. Who knows? I don't mind it. Don't mind it at all. But that's it. I'm not going to talk about it anymore. We don't need to dive into that bucket. We'll let the optimizer do its work. Last week's sixes are the last one. 2 to 5 is what we're looking for here. And here are all of the 10K golfers that we could choose from. So this just seems super obvious. Remember, we're looking for 2 to 5. How do we fade a 10K guy? I don't know. I feel like it's almost impossible now that we see this as one of the key buckets. I could see a couple of these guys finishing inside the top 10. So I think you're like, the success rate of you picking one of these guys is pretty high and them finishing inside the top 10. Remember, we want 2 to 5. 3 seems like a pretty safe number to select from. So if you wanted to like start with, I'm going to start with like Fitzpatrick. That's what I'm thinking about. It's like Fitzpatrick and combining him with like Andrew Putnam or Seamus Power seems pretty good in my opinion. Like I'm really liking Seamus Power this week. Going there and or even Keith Mitchell. I don't mind that. Like, seems pretty decent. But let's say we go with one of these two guys. Let's just say Seamus Power. So I'm guessing Fitzpatrick Power lineups are going to be very popular. That's fine. I don't care because we can make up elsewhere. Nate Lashley seems like a good fill-in. And in the 8K range, I don't mind going to Eric Van Rooyen. I bet you anything going to an Eric Van Rooyen gives me all the leverage that I need. If Fitzpatrick and Power are going to be extremely popular, I bet you no one plays Eric Van Rooyen. Maybe I'm wrong on that. Could be. I feel like a lot of people will go to Webb. Seems like a pretty good fit here, although he's pretty awful in my model. Lipsky seems like a pretty good person to go to as well. So that's like that takes care of the 8K range. Yeah, low 7 for me would be Nate Lashley. He was in a bucket that you didn't want to select too many guys from. I like Brandon Wu. I like Troy Merritt. So I don't mind a lot of these guys. I have no issue playing any of them. Yeah, 2 to 5 though is what we're projecting out of this bucket. All right, moving on. We go from our last week buckets to our course history buckets. And this almost every this actually changed. This is different. I was gonna say almost every single week we see like 1 to 3 from the top 3 buckets, or not the top 3, 1 to 3 from these middle buckets, but we don't. We have 0 to 2 0 to 2 course history 1s, 1 to 3 course history 2s, 2 to 5 course history 3s, 0 to 2 course history 4s, and then basically 0 to 2 for the other 2 as well. So let's see here. We have 0 to 2 on our top, the course history 1 bucket, and then course history 4, 5, and 6, and then it mixes in. Okay, let's see if I can remember that. Course history 1. Remember, we want 0 to 2 from this. Jordan Spieth, Taylor Moore, Marcel Siem. Siem? I think that's how you say his name. Interesting. I didn't know he was in the field. 0 to 2, yeah. So there's 3 golfers in that bucket, which is really interesting because we've seen 100% frequency rate of golfers from this bucket finishing inside the top 10. Again, frequency rate means at least one guy every single year that I've done the course history buckets has finished inside the top 10. Which, does that happen this year? My projection isn't very kind of that happening. We usually see 8 golfers from that bucket. We only have 3. It's not super great, but if you just believe in the bucket gods, if you want to call it that, there's a really good argument to make for Jordan Spieth. And if you didn't like Jordan Spieth, fill him in with Taylor Moore. Fill it in with Taylor Moore. Or take a huge bullet with Marcel Siem. Crazy. Super crazy, man. Like, Taylor Moore just actually pops out a lot more. And I don't really care to play Taylor Moore, honestly. He's very close to being in the blacklist for me. But I guess not terrible, right? I guess not terrible. So that's an interesting one. Interesting. to see the 100% frequency rate. A lot of things are pointing Jordan Spieth. Course history 2, we're looking for 1 to 3 golfers from here, or at least that's what we're projecting to be inside the top 10. Victor Hovland fits this bucket. Looks like he only has 1 finish under his belt in his 38th place, so I don't know what you want to do with that. He obviously hasn't been showing up in the buckets that we want to see with last year or last week, so I think it's just getting easier to fade him. Same goes with like Maverick McNeely. I don't mind. Yeah, we want 1 to 3 golfers from this bucket. I guess it could be any of these guys. You know, I mean, they're all in other buckets that are like 0 to 1, 0 to 2 that you would want to grab from, and they easily could be the guy. And even if you selected one of these guys, so if it was Maverick McNeely, it still satisfies the projection of how many golfers we think are going to be inside the top 10. So there's no obvious choice for me here. I'm just going to let the optimizer do its work tomorrow in the strategy video and see who we'll pick from here. I imagine it's going to stick with the cheaper golfers, you know, like Neesmith or even Sig, Will Gordon, Lonto Griffin, Scott Stallings. I think it'll probably go somewhere with those guys. I don't know. We'll see. I don't mind playing McNeely or Rose. I don't. The buckets aren't really loving them, but it's still all a possibility that these guys can finish inside the top 10, obviously. Moving on from there, going to course history 3. This is going to be the bucket we want to select from the most. 2 to 5 is the projection to finish inside the top 10. Most of our strength of field points are going here. There are 46 golfers in that bucket this year where we normally see 35. So that's probably a big indicator as to why the projection is so large. This starts with Fitzpatrick and it has Hoagie in it as well. So it's really interesting, right? Because we were just talking about course history 1 buckets and how that has 100% frequency rate. I could see us starting with like Fitzpatrick or Hoagie and anchoring them in with Taylor Moore. I think lineups would work that way. Or we go with Jordan Spieth, and we already talked about anchoring like, oh, we talked about Fitzpatrick and Power together. What if we go Jordan Spieth and Power together? That seems pretty reasonable. Again, we're looking 2 to 5, so you could go Fitzpatrick and Power from this bucket. Very easy. Now, Kurt Kitayama hasn't been in a lot of our good buckets, but hey, putting him here and then, you know, having the optimizer sort things out, that's fine. Same goes with Nate Lashley. It's going to be really interesting to see what the optimizer does. It could break. It just feels like there are so many limited options with some of these guys where it's like if you did go with Kitayama, you take out a bunch of other guys, you know, like a lot of other higher priced guys, which are more easy to build your lamps around than a lot of these 7 and 6K golfers. So I don't know, 2 to 5, remember, from this bucket. And there are a lot of golfers in it. The next one to look at, course history 4s, 0 to 2, and it's course history, for the next 3 course history buckets, the projections are 0 to 2. So let's just keep that in mind. Course history 4 starts with Davis Riley, Ryan Palmer, golfer that I like, Ben Taylor. Now, I think I'm just going to skip this bucket. I don't think there's much to talk about. It looks like a lot of glue can be created from here, or it can be used, because a lot of these guys just provide salary relief for you, and the projection is 0 to 2. So maybe you don't want to pick anyone from here. That's totally fine. Going to the next one with course history 5s. Again, it's 0 to 2 from here. This one's a little bit more interesting because Smalley and Burmester are 8K and above. Nick Hardy has talked about it quite a bit. Justin Suh. Just to double check, frequency rate 75%. That's not terrible. So to 10 years, I think course history would be last 8 years. So this is 6 out of 8 years that we've seen one guy at least inside the top 10 from this bucket. But yeah, 0 to 2, nothing is very obvious of, you know, picking golfers from here. I don't ever really reference the optimal lineup portion of this, but 40% frequency rate of being inside the optimal lineup. So it's not a super great bucket to grab from, and you don't want more than one, period. So when you look at this, hard, right? Because it's like you can mix up like 3 of these guys or 4 of these guys pretty darn easy. I mean, like the salaries just work out really well. 87, 84, 77, 73. You could still add a 10K golfer to that. You could still add a 9K golfer to that. You might even go 10-9 with 2 8s and these 2 7s and maybe grab a low 6K if it's possible. I don't know if it is. So yeah, there's still like lineup opportunities you can do here. Now, I wouldn't advocate for that. I would just stick with the bucket projections. Entirely up to you guys though. I'm okay with just playing one of these guys, maybe 2, but that's it. I mean, my eyes instantly gravitate to these 2 guys. Yeah, Smalley's been a guy that a lot of people talked about. I think he's a decent play. Not super great POA stats. In fact, none of these guys have super good POA stats. Justin Lauer does. Just kind of looking at some of these. This is last week's off the tee and approach. That's kind of what I like to look at the most. Yeah, Smalley, positive approach, and off the tee, love that. Same with Nick Hardy. Not so much with Justin Suh, but good approach stats. And also looking at recent form, off the tee and approach. Yeah, Smalley is positive in both. Burmester's just playing up to what he normally does, good off the tee. And Nick Hardy has good approach stats. Only Justin Suh is like kind of the only iffy one. And then season long, what does Justin Suh do? Positive off the tee, negative on approach. Interesting. We've been seeing the inverse of that. So maybe he's kind of erratic with his driver right now, and that's causing him to have better approach stats. Nick Hardy, though. Hardy or Smalley just seems like a more... They just seem like a safer play because of their strokes gain stats. And Hardy's really the... If I'm pulling everything in together, despite Burmester having a better ranking than Hardy, I just see the grass stats as kind of the equalizer for me. Just stats in general, last week, last 7 weeks, season long, all of it kind of points towards Hardy. If you really needed a guy from this bucket, that'd be my highest confidence guy. But yeah, we don't want more than one, so keep that in mind. And then course history 6, these are golfers who've never played this tournament before. And by the way, course history buckets should really be called tournament history this week because there are 3 golf courses. It's hard to say course history. But the guys who've not played here, we project 0 to 2. Not a high frequency rate of finishing inside the top 10. Not a high success rate. Never been in the optimal lineup. So maybe you just avoid this bucket and be just fine with it. I might just put this as 0 to 1, which is super interesting because look at who we see. Dietrich, Ben Griffin, EVR, Robbie Shelton, like a lot of good names. If this bucket still holds up to have 0 guys in the optimal lineup, I'm going to be impressed because just the 5 golfers that I've highlighted are golfers that I've thought about playing, that I'm really interested in playing. Now, you can still win a GPP with 1 or 2 of these guys in your lineup. But man, it doesn't look good. I think I'm going to set this to 0 to 1 in the optimizer and have it build me lineups. It does say 0 to 2, and even the more conservative number is higher. So it's really trying to suggest, hey, keep an open mind to have at least 2 guys in your lineup. Or at least 2 spots available for one of these golfers or 2 of these golfers. Okay, that's fine. I guess I'll keep it 0 to 2. I want to close it to 0 to 1 because I do firmly believe in the Yeah, I'm going to do that. I'm going to put it 0 to 1. If I choose Griffin, that means I'm knocking out Dietrich and the rest of these guys. If I choose Dietrich, I'm knocking the rest of these guys out. If I choose EVR, I'm knocking out Dietrich, Griffin, and the rest. Like, that's fine. I'm going to stick to my guns. Let's just do it. Have faith in the bucket system. Moving on from there, we're going to go to recent form buckets. Nothing really to see here. It seems pretty open. 1 to 3 last year, or sorry, 1 to 3 recent form 1s, 0 to 2 recent form 2s, 1 to 3 recent form 3s, 0 to 2, 0 to 2, 0 to 2 for the rest of them. So nothing really stands out. 100% frequency rate for these middle three buckets. So recent form 2, 3, and 4. And only recent form 3 and 4 have optimal lineup. Golfers that have been in the optimal lineup from this bucket every single year. So let's go ahead and get into that. So first starting with recent form 1s, which are going to be your best recent form. Guys coming into this tournament with an average of a top 20 finish. That is exactly what this means. Not a lot of them, and they're all 8K and above, really 9K and above except for Erik van Rooyen. Yeah, Victor Hovland, Matt Fitzpatrick, Andrew Putnam, Maverick McNeely, and Matt Kuchar. So our projection was what? 1 to 3. It's a very low max projection for 2.05, but the rules are the rules. You always round up to 3 in this scenario. So 1 to 3. So grabbing one from here, which just kind of screams out, start Fitzpatrick. So far as I've been going through this, it's been Fitzpatrick or it's been Spieth, one of the two. And sure, Matt McNeely has been showing up too. And this actually opens up Jordan Spieth McNeely lineups, but you could technically grab up to 2 golfers from here. I mean, I should say this. 2 is what I'm projecting to be inside the top 10 at a maximum. It's possible. And it's possible it could be Hovland and Fitzpatrick. It could be Fitzpatrick and McNeely. That's not to say there aren't other 9 and 10K golfers that can't finish inside the top 10 as well. But if you wanted to just start here, I'll never criticize you for it, because if your 2 guys finish inside the top 10, that's what we're looking for. So anyways, 0 to 2, kind of a strong emphasis of picking at least 1, right? Oh, I'm sorry, 1 to 3. Sorry, 1 to 3. Yeah, I just remembered it was just over 2. 1 to 3 is what we want. Wow. I kind of fell in love with like a Jordan Spieth power start, but I could go power, or I could go Fitzpatrick power, or even Fitzpatrick McNeely, or maybe even like Jordan Spieth McNeely, and maybe toss in Erik van Rooyen. All super interesting. Now, of course, Van Rooyen is in the 0 course history bucket, or course history 6, which is not a good one to be in. So I don't know. That'll be interesting to see what the optimizer does. Recent form 2, this one was the big one, right? No, 0 to 2 from here. And it starts with Hoagie power. We were just talking about power. Justin Rose, Dietrich, Griffin. So when I see 0 to 2, and it's kind of like hinting towards you want at least 1. 100% frequency rate, by the way. High success rate. Less golfers than we normally see. So that's probably what's really driving this down. Yeah, I don't mind selecting one of these guys and moving on. I'll tell you one thing. Although Hoagie's been showing up in some of these buckets where it's like, yeah, you want at least 1, and he's usually one of the better golfers from the bucket, I can easily fade him this week because I really like power that much more. And if I didn't really care to play power in all my lineups, then I don't mind dropping to a Rose, Dietrich, or Griffin. Although most of those buckets only tell me play only one of them. This is a week where the optimizer, I think, is going to shine. Just finding the 2 guys you want to anchor around and going from there is going to help a lot. I believe this is the recent form 3 bucket that we're going to next. That is the one where we want 1 to 3. And there's Jordan Spieth. Just makes it a little easier to say, hey, pick Jordan, because then it drops. The salary ranges drop, and it's not even on golfers that we really want. We've already talked ourselves off of like Alex Smalley, Dean Burmester. We didn't talk ourselves off of Taylor Moore, though. Remember that one bucket that Spieth and Moore were in? Which one was it? Course history 1? Where it's like you want one guy from this bucket, but or it's like 0 to, I forget, what was it? Oh, the frequency rate was 100%, but the projection was 0 to 2. do we select one of these guys and it fulfills this bucket, and maybe we select another guy, or maybe we, ooh, I don't know if we play both of them. I almost think this is a if or statement. If Spieth, well, it would be if and then statement. If Spieth, then not more. Or if more, then not Spieth. So that's interesting. And then we also have Nick Hardy here. Remember, we want 1 to 3, so we can get up to 3 guys that we want to put in our lineups. Ben Taylor's, yeah. There's a lot of names that I'm looking, that I've already kind of had my eyes on, that I'm seeing in these buckets that are like, yep, you got to be. Now we got to be a little strict when building our lineups. So yeah, 1 to 3 recent form 3s. We've seen 1 to 3 inside the optimal lineup. Yeah, that's fine. And now 0 to 2 for the rest of these. Now there is a 100% frequency rate with this next one, so recent form 4s. Pendrith is up there. We've kind of already crossed Pendrith off. Kitayama seems really interesting to play. Remember, 100% frequency rate, but the projection is actually 0 to 2. So we could go with one of these guys and just move on. I don't care which one it is. I'll let the optimizer do the work. In all honesty, for how many golfers we have 41. If I were to just put the exposure settings to 2%, like I don't want more than 2% of any of these guys, it's just going to mix and match pretty easy. In the optimizer is what I'm talking about. So if anything, I probably like Troy Merritt the most. Kitayama is probably second. And then I just don't know from there. I almost don't care. Like I don't mind Will Gordon, but this doesn't seem like a track that's really set up for him. Doesn't matter. I'll let the optimizer do its work. Recent form 5, 0 to 2. Same goes with recent form 6s. In all reality, I could probably just skip these buckets. That includes Webb Simpson, Matthew Neesmith. That's fine. I don't have to play anyone from here. Charlie Hoffman is in my dummy lineup. I'm probably gonna have to change that. I thought just name value alone seemed pretty good. Has a decent POA history, but not super great when it comes to course history. Looks like he had a withdrawal last year or a DQ, one of the two. Usually only include these stats if they start a tournament and don't finish it, not if they don't show up. So I'd have to double check to see if that's the case here. Yeah, 0 to 2 with good reason. Not a lot of good golfers in this bucket. And then the last one is also 0 to 2 for the recent form 6s. So Joel Damon's in this bucket, hasn't played this calendar year. I don't know what it's from. I think he had a baby. I think that's the main reason. But him and Kisner are really the only notable names. The rest of these guys are just dart throws, lotto tickets, whatever you want to call them. We have talked about Marcel Siem already, so he was in that bucket with both Jordan Spieth and Taylor Moore. The 100% frequency bucket was just those 3 guys, but the projection was 0 to 2. So it's like, do you go with the 100% frequency and say there's going to be at least one golfer from that bucket this year to be in it, or is this a year it breaks? Maybe it's not Spieth, maybe it's not Moore, maybe you want Marcel Siem, 6,500. I don't like this bucket whatsoever. I don't care to play Damon. I've never been a Damon guy. Seems like a good course for him because he's a short ball hitter, more focuses on, approach than anything. I don't care. I don't feel like I'm losing out if I don't play Joel Damon. And same goes with Kevin Kisner. I could just see myself completely fading this bucket. So that wraps up the recent form buckets. Now, the next one to talk about really would be your salary buckets, but we already kind of went over this during the pass optimal lineup and GPP winning lineups. Talked about how there's been at least one 10K golfer in every single lineup in the optimal lineup, as well as the GPP winning lineup. You can see that information right here. There's been at least one 10K, one 9K, and one 7K in every single optimal lineup dating back to 2018. Now, that also includes a sweet spot optimal. So keep that in mind. it feels like you want to start 10K, 9K no matter what. And then obviously naturally just put in a 7K in your lineup. Now I will say this, with the 7Ks, it does show 2 to 4. Our conservative max projection is actually 3, and you want a 2-point buffer. So what I would do with this bucket is actually change the minimum from 2 to 1 and just keep the maximum at 4. There's gonna be a 3-point buffer between that, just because the conservative max projection is not super great. Now, when you look at that 10K range, it's still pretty high. 1 to 3 is the projection to be inside the top 10. That's not changing. 9K stays the same, 1.93, 1.95, which means technically that's 0 to 2. We have seen 100% frequency rate inside the top 10. We've actually at least seen 2 every single year inside the top 10, and at least 1 in the optimal lineup every single year. So keep that in mind. And another thing to mention, to point out, there's only been a maximum of 1 golfer from the 10K range inside the top, or in the optimal lineup. So playing 2 10K golfers this year, probably not ideal. It's not to say you can't, because the projection is saying 1 to 3 probably will finish inside the top 10. But I think how the rest of the salary construction might shake out this year, you might not be able to do it. So probably avoid that. I'm not going to really mention the rest of them. Like the 6K range isn't super ideal, and neither is the 8K range. So it might not be a week to pepper the 8K range, Chad. Maybe we don't do it. Although the frequency rate is almost 100%. I think since 2018, it's 5 years. Over the last 5 years, we've seen at least 4 of them having 1 8K golfer inside the top 10. But a 40% frequency rate of being the optimal lineup, which isn't super great. That's 2 out of 5 years. And the max is only 1. So having more, not great, but also we did see a GPP winner have 3 8K golfers in it. I don't remember when it was. Obviously, check out the GPP/optimal lineup section of this video, or just the original video that or not original, but the short video that I created for it. Check that out and see it there. But I'm going to move on from salaries. Last bucket to talk about are our strokes gained buckets. You want to know how this is comprised, because I still have a numbering system 1 to 6, but there are different definitions. Check out the bucket system video that I have in the description below. That'll explain all about it, because I do things a little bit differently. I don't want to spend time explaining it. So strokes gained 1, 0 to 2. Go ahead and take a look. These are when all stats are positive when it comes to strokes gained stats over the last year. Fitzpatrick's in it. Dietrich, Griffin. I mean, we want 0 to 2. We've seen 100% frequency rate inside the top 10. Not in the optimal lineup, though. I think 3 out of 4 years we've seen a golfer from this bucket to be in the optimal lineup. That's cool, because I don't mind just playing Fitzpatrick and moving on. I can skip the rest of these guys. And if it's not Fitzpatrick, if I go Jordan Spieth, I don't mind playing any of these other guys. Remember, some of these guys are in buckets that are not super great. So this might be, if we can grab the right 2 guys, anchor around them, and let the optimizer do all of its work, it might be, if the buckets beat out the GPP winning lineup, this could be our best shot at taking a GPP down by following the buckets, just because of how strict it's looking to become. Strokes gained 2. We're looking at somewhere between 1 to 3, 100% frequency rate, 100% frequency rate in the optimal lineups. So definitely grabbing a golfer from here seems to be the way to go. 1 to 3 is what we're looking for. Hovland and Hoagie, yeah, I could probably skip those guys pretty easy, because we've already been talking about Fitzpatrick and Spieth a ton, which makes me more excited about people like Power, potentially McNeely, Taylor Moore. If we don't go Spieth, Moore seems even more in play. Nick Hardy, great play. Justin Suh, don't mind that. SH Kim, talked about him a bunch. I don't mind that. And some of these other guys down here that we consider glue, like Troy Merritt, another good choice. So projection was 1 to 3 from that bucket. We're going to strokes gained 3s, which we also want 1 to 3. 50% frequency rate to be inside the optimal lineup, but 100% rate of being inside the top 10, which means starting with Jordan Spieth might not be the best case. 1 to 3 though is what we want. Spieth to me just takes the cake. We've already talked about fading Pendrith and Smalley and Burmester pretty in length. We just talked about Damon, how we didn't quite like him. Now with the rest of the guys down here, I don't know how we going with that. So when I look at the projection, 1 to 3, we've seen one inside the top 10 every single year. So frequency rate, 100%, but 50% frequency rate to be in the optimal lineup, which is kind of telling us like we could see multiple 10K golfers inside the top 10. Jordan Spieth could be a guy that finishes inside the top 10th or top 10, but finishes 7th, 8th, 9th, or 10th place and is not in the optimal lineup. That's exactly what this reads. When the frequency rate is 50% in optimal lineups, but 100% in top 10s, that's exactly the narrative that's playing out. Spieth could finish top 10, but not in the optimal lineup. And if we're chasing the optimal lineup, that means we're not going with Jordan Spieth, which means I might anchor my lineups. Well, so we're doing the, I'm trying to, you remember that bucket we were just talking about, the course history ones, where Spieth, Taylor Moore, and Marcel Siem are in it. We could go Fitzpatrick and Taylor Moore, anchor around those guys, and then build lineups from there. See what it spits out. The only thing that I have an issue with that is looking at this bucket right now, what you see on the screen. I don't like anybody not named Jordan Spieth. Like, if I'm going to put a weighting scale to this, Jordan Spieth will get 70 points out of 100, and maybe even more, maybe 75 points out of 100 of the players that I'd rather play. And then I probably allocate 2 to 3 points to Smalley, Burmester, Pendrith, Lipsky, Gordon, Bramlett, and Neesmith. And then it's 1 or less for the rest of the guys. So it's like, it's Jordan Spieth out of this bucket or bust. And if the projections hold up 1 to 3, I still would want to go with Spieth. Like, even if he finishes 10th place, I'm okay with that. I don't care if he's the top price guy and he gives me a 10th place finish. I'm looking to get 6 of my guys inside the top 10. That still covers that. So might galaxy brain ourselves here, but hey, it's fun to talk about. Stroke scene 4, 100% frequency in the optimal lineups. 40 golfers in that bucket this year, 36 on average. Projection is 0 to 2. I mean, the minimum is over 1, which is like, hey, this is actually not a bad choice, but it is a volume driven bucket, and that's probably why it's not super. I mean, that's probably why the projection is actually as high as it is, because if it didn't have 40 golfers in it and say it had 20, it would definitely plummet down to 0 to 2 really easy. So remember, 100% frequency rate. Actually, I didn't see, was it also, or I don't remember, was it also 100%? Yeah, it's 100%. 100% frequency rate in the optimal lineup. 75% in the top 10. That's interesting. And this starts with Putnam, Matt Kuchar, Denny McCarthy, 3 notable 9K golfers. Interesting. I don't like this bucket. I don't like the guys at the top, so I'm really not going to anchor around any of these guys. If the optimizer just selects them, that's fine. Like, if I went with like Matt Fitzpatrick and then Taylor Moore, you know, because that's just something I've been talking about this whole video, it could naturally get to one of these guys in the 9K range. You know, it could easily get to Putnam, Kuchar, or even a Denny McCarthy, because Taylor Moore's 8,300, Spieth is 10.6, or not Spieth, Matt Fitzpatrick is 10.1. That gives salary relief or comfort to grab one of these 9K guys. Outside of that, I mean, this is a very gross bucket. Golfers that I just don't care to play. Now, technically, this bucket, this is negative off the tee plus positive putting. So if I actually scroll over to the stroke gain stats, we look at off the tee, you're going to see all these guys are negative off the tee, but they're all positive with putting. that seems like if you were to create a strokes gain model for this tournament, what would be the most beneficial? It would be, you could be negative off the tee, but you'd want to be positive with approach and positive with putting. Like, that's what would fit the narrative of this golf course or of this tournament. So with that being said, you could certainly go that route. I'm probably just going to avoid it, honestly. I don't like it. The next buckets aren't really worth talking about. I mean, yeah, they probably are because they're going to have people in them, but you want 0 to 2 from here. Nick Taylor, strokes gained 5. Eric Van Rooyen, Russell Knox. Yeah, I probably will stay away from this bucket if I can. 0 to 2 is the projection, which is really interesting. Our frequency rate of being inside the top 10 is 75%, as is the optimal lineup, which is weird. It's scary. This is negative off the tee, negative putting. I suppose maybe guys that have good approach, this will play into their hands, but yeah, I don't know. I don't mind playing Nick Taylor. I've already talked about how I like Eric Van Rooyen. I made a dummy lineup with Charlie Hoffman in it. And I don't mind Russell Knox. So the top 4 guys in this bucket, you know, in the salaries, I don't mind playing whatsoever. But yeah, I'm probably limiting myself to one of these guys, no more. I don't care. Yeah, just no more. And then strokes gained 6, same story. This is actually even worse. There's only 6 golfers in this bucket. Probably can avoid at all costs. Yeah, no one we really know, not worth even discussing. So that wraps up the bucket system. That wraps up this video. Just to remind you of some giveaways. If you didn't already know, I do a weekly and a monthly giveaway. This video and tomorrow's video and all the other small videos that I'll create with those two, all will go towards this monthly giveaway, the January monthly giveaway, which I'll run during next Monday's video. So someone, if we can get to the subscriber goal of 500 subscribers all the way over there, I will give away $50 to anyone who has participated on my channel over this last month. Otherwise, I'm going to give away a t-shirt that has the logo that you see on the sweatshirt, just not mirrored, obviously. So I'm going to be giving something out away, or something out away. I'm going to give something away to somebody, whether it's $50 or it's a t-shirt, one of the two, for the monthly giveaway. So if you want a chance to win, comment on the video, be subscribed, and that's it. And comment on any of the other videos I post this week, because that also goes to next week. We're also doing a weekly giveaway. So I'll be running a monthly giveaway next week as well as a weekly giveaway, giving out a t-shirt or $50, one of the two, depending if we hit that subscriber goal of 500 subscribers before next Monday. Keep that in mind. Hopefully you follow along with me with the cheat sheet. I had that one available. There's a link in the description for that. And then, of course, prize picks. If you want to play this for free and you're in a state that allows it, use the link in the description to get to the sign up page. It'll already populate the Sweet Spot promo code in there. Sign up with that and put at least $20 in your account, and I will send you $20 back. Super simple, and prize picks will match your deposit up to $100. So 20 turns into 40, only costs you the initial sign up information as well as the initial deposit. Super simple. Highly encourage you guys to do so, and thank you for doing it as well. And that would be it. So 2 hours down. Tomorrow's probably gonna be 3 hours with the strategy video. That's coming out at 8 p.m. We'll be live with that one. Come in with some lineup ideas. I'll construct some lineups using the optimizer, and we'll go from there. All right, I got nothing else for this one. Thank you for watching. Please leave a like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff, and I'll see you in the next one. All right, bye.